The water that changed everything. I was 43 years old the day someone splashed water in my face and called me stupid. I had survived Soviet labor camps, underground fighting circles where men battle for bread, years of hunger that drained me from my bones, and poverty that taught you the weight of a coin. But nothing in all those decades of pain and survival prepared me for the humiliation of feeling cold water dripping down my face in a crowded restaurant while strangers laughed and filmed me with their phones. Subscribe to this channel if you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your appearance, or the quiet way you move through the world. The restaurant was nothing special. A mid-range place in the city, the kind with artificial plants in the corners and menus that tried too hard to sound exotic. I was sitting alone at a corner table, the way I always do. Visibility of the exits. Back to the wall. Old habits from old times. I was eating slowly, methodically, the way you eat when food was once a luxury you couldn't guarantee. Every bite measured. Every moment savored. Not because the food was exceptional, but because I learned long ago that you never know when the next meal might come. I noticed him when he walked in. You develop instincts when you've lived the life I've lived. He was young, maybe 25, wearing clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Designer everything. The kind of logos that scream for attention. Gold chains thick enough to anchor a small boat. 3 friends with him, all cut from the same cloth. Loud. Entitled. The kind of young men who've never been told no, never faced real consequence, never understood that the world doesn't owe them the space they think they deserve. They were seated several tables away, but their voices carried. Laughter that was too loud, too performative. They were showing off for each other, for the room, for the phones they kept checking every 30 seconds. I continued eating, paying them no attention. This wasn't my business. I learned a long time ago to recognize trouble and avoid it when possible. But trouble, I found, doesn't always give you that choice. I was lifting my glass of water when I felt eyes on me. Direct. Assessing. Mocking. I glanced up briefly and saw him staring at me. The leader of the group. The one with the most expensive watch and the cruelest smile. He said something to his friends and they all turned to look. Then came the laughter. Not subtle. Not kind. The kind of laughter designed to humiliate. I returned my attention to my meal. Let them laugh. I've been laughed at by men far more dangerous than these children playing at being tough. I've been mocked by guards with guns, by fighters with reputations, by people who held my life in their hands. These boys with their designer clothes and their social media accounts were nothing. Less than nothing. But he couldn't let it go. Have you ever encountered someone so desperate for validation that your mere existence feels like a challenge to them? In a moment, you'll understand why some people need to tear others down just to feel tall themselves. I heard the chair scrape. Footsteps approaching. I didn't look up. Sometimes, if you don't give them the reaction they want, they lose interest. Sometimes. Not this time. He stopped at my table. I could smell his cologne, expensive and overpowering, the kind that announces itself 3 rooms away. "Hey, old man," he said in Russian, his accent marking him as city-born, privileged, never hungry a day in his life. "This is a nice restaurant. Maybe you should be eating at the soup kitchen down the street instead." His friends erupted in laughter. Phones came out. Recording. Everything is content now. Every cruelty, every humiliation, packaged for strangers to consume and forget 30 seconds later. I continued eating. Slowly. Deliberately. I've learned that silence is often the strongest response. Words can be twisted, used against you, turned into ammunition. Silence is a wall they can't climb. "I'm talking to you," he said, voice harder now. Anger creeping in. How dare I not respond? How dare I not play my role in his performance? I set down my fork carefully, wiped my mouth with my napkin, folded it precisely and placed it beside my plate. Then I looked up at him. Really looked at him. Held his eyes with mine. I didn't speak. Didn't need to. I've stared down men who killed for sport, who carved their reputations in blood and bone. This boy saw something in my eyes that made him take a small step back. Just a small one. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. I always notice. That small step back should have been the end of it. He should have laughed it off, returned to his table, moved on with his life. His pride should have been satisfied. But pride, I've learned, makes people stupid. Pride makes them escalate when they should retreat. Pride turns small moments into disasters. He grabbed his glass of water. I saw it happening before it happened. The way his hand moved. The shift in his posture. The decision in his eyes. Time seemed to slow, the way it does in moments of violence, that strange elasticity where seconds stretch and you can see everything with perfect clarity. I could have moved. Could have stopped him. Could have caught his wrist mid-throw with the kind of speed that would have shocked him. But I didn't. Sometimes you have to let people make their mistakes. Sometimes you have to let them show the room exactly who they are. Sometimes you have to let them dig their own graves before you show them the shovel. The water hit my face. Cold. Shocking. Not because of the temperature, but because of what it represented. Disrespect. Humiliation. The kind of public shaming designed to strip away dignity. The restaurant went quiet. That special kind of quiet where everyone is watching but pretending not to. Where everyone has become an audience to someone else's degradation. Water dripped from my face. Down my nose. Off my chin. Onto my shirt. I didn't move. Didn't wipe it away. Just sat there, water running down my face, and looked at him. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 15. The weight of it becoming unbearable. His friends had stopped laughing. The phones were still recording, but something had shifted in the room. Something dangerous and old had entered the space. "What are you going to do about it, old man?" he said, but his voice was different now. Less certain. Testing. Probing for a reaction that would make sense of the way I was looking at him. I stood up. Slowly. No sudden movements. No aggression. Just an old man rising from his chair. But the way I stood, the way I held myself, the decades of training that live in my bones and muscles and cannot be hidden even when I want to hide them, something about it changed the air in the room. I'm not a tall man. Never have been. But I've learned that size is just one form of space, and there are other ways to fill a room. Do you know what it feels like to see someone realize they've made a terrible mistake? In the next few minutes, you'll see exactly how that recognition looks on a man's face. I wiped the water from my face with my hand. Slowly. Deliberately. Maintaining eye contact. Then I spoke for the first time, my voice quiet, barely above a whisper, but in that silent restaurant it carried to every corner. You should sit down now. Not a threat. Not a warning. Just a statement of fact. The way you might tell someone the floor is wet or the door is locked. Simple information about the reality of the situation. He laughed, but it was forced now. Brittle. Or what? You're going to fight me, Grandpa? I'll break you in half. His friends were standing now too, forming up behind him. Pack behavior. Safety in numbers. The eternal mathematics of cowards who've never had to stand alone. I looked at each of them in turn. Really looked. Measured them. Assessed them. Not with anger. Not with hatred. With the cold calculation of someone who's done this mathematics 10,000 times before. Someone who survived by knowing exactly how dangerous every person in a room is. Exactly how a fight will unfold before the first punch is thrown. You won't, I said simply. The certainty in my voice made him hesitate. That hesitation should have been enough. Should have been the warning that saved him. Should have been the moment he recognized that maybe, just maybe, the quiet old man eating alone wasn't what he appeared to be. But the phones were recording. His friends were watching. His pride was on the line. And pride, as I said, makes people stupid. He threw the punch. Right hand. Haymaker. Telegraphed from tomorrow. The kind of punch someone throws who's never been in a real fight, who learned to fight for movies and video games, who doesn't understand that real violence is fast and ugly and doesn't look cinematic. I stepped inside it. Not back. Not away. Inside. The punch sailed past my ear, hitting nothing but air, and in that moment when he was extended off balance, committed to a strike that found no target, I placed my hand on his chest. Just placed it there. Didn't push. Didn't strike. Just touched him. Then I applied pressure. Not a lot. Just enough. My fingers found the nerve cluster beneath his collarbone, the place where pressure creates a sensation that overwhelms the nervous system. I learned this in places where weapons weren't allowed but violence was mandatory, where you had to incapacitate someone without leaving marks that would get you killed. His eyes went wide. His legs buckled. I guided him down to his knees with just that one hand on his chest, his entire body folding around that point of controlled pain. The whole thing took maybe 3 seconds. One moment he was throwing a punch. The next he was on his knees, gasping, unable to understand what had just happened to him. His friends froze. The phones kept recording. The restaurant stayed silent. I leaned down, my hand still on his chest, maintaining just enough pressure to keep him compliant, and spoke quietly enough that only he could hear. I'm 63 years old. I've survived things that would kill you in your sleep. I've fought in places where the loser didn't get to walk away. I've earned every scar, every callus, every year that you think makes me weak. And I'm going to give you something now that no one ever gave me when I was young and stupid like you. I'm going to give you the chance to learn without paying the full price. Are you listening? He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. Not from pain, though I knew it hurt. From fear. From the sudden recognition that he'd miscalculated badly. That the world was more dangerous and more complex than his privileged existence had prepared him for. Good, I said. You're going to apologize. To me. To the restaurant staff. To everyone here. You're going to mean it. Then you're going to leave. You and your friends. You're going to go home and think about what happened here today. And if you're smart, if you're capable of learning, you'll understand that respect isn't given based on age or appearance or how much money someone's clothes cost. Respect is earned through how you treat people who can't defend themselves. Do you understand? He nodded again, more vigorously this time. I released the pressure and stepped back. He collapsed forward, catching himself with his hands, breathing hard. I returned to my seat, picked up my napkin, and calmly wiped the remaining water from my face. The restaurant was still silent. Every eye on us. Every phone still recording. This would be online within minutes. Viral within hours. But that wasn't my concern. Let them see. Let the world watch an old man refuse to accept humiliation. Let it be a lesson, if anyone was capable of learning. The young man struggled to his feet. His face was red. Tears on his cheeks. His friends moved to help him, but he waved them off. To his credit, and this is why I tell you this story, he did something I didn't expect. Something that told me maybe, just maybe, there was something worth saving in him. He looked at me. Really looked. And I saw recognition there. Understanding. The beginning of wisdom purchased through humiliation. I'm sorry, he said. His voice cracked. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. I was wrong. Completely wrong. He turned to the restaurant, to the staff, to everyone watching. I apologize to all of you. There's no excuse for how I behaved. Then he turned back to me. Can I ask your name, sir? I considered not answering. Considered letting him leave without that knowledge. But something in his face, some genuine contrition, made me decide to give him one more gift. One more piece of the lesson. Anatoly, I said simply. His face went pale. His friends' faces went pale. Everyone in that restaurant who was Russian or Ukrainian or from any part of the former Soviet Union, they all recognized the name. They all knew the stories, the legends, the whispered tales of the old man who looked weak but moved like violence incarnate. They all knew what it meant that this young fool had thrown water in my face, had tried to fight me, had survived the encounter with nothing more than his pride damaged. Have you ever seen someone realize they were standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark and had somehow avoided falling? Keep listening. What happened next changed everything. Oh God, he whispered. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't. I raised my hand, stopping him. If you had known my name, would you have treated me with respect? Or would you still have mocked that old man you saw eating alone, the one you thought was weak, the one you thought couldn't defend himself? That's the question you need to answer. Not for me. For yourself. He stood there, understanding flooding his features. Understanding that the lesson wasn't about who I was. It was about who he was. About how he treated people when he thought there would be no consequences. About the kind of man he was becoming in a world that told him his wealth and youth made him better than others. I understand, he said quietly. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to learn. He left then, his friends following in silence. The restaurant slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed. Phones were put away. The staff approached, concerned, offering to call the police, to ban those young men, to do something to make this right. I declined. The situation was resolved. Justice in its own way had been served. I finished my meal, paid my bill, left a generous tip for the server who'd had to witness that scene. As I walked to the door, people nodded to me. Respectful. Some even stood. Word was already spreading. I could see it on their faces. The old man was Anatoly, the legend, the one from the stories. I nodded back and left. Outside, the evening air was cool. City sounds surrounded me. Traffic, voices, life continuing its endless flow. I walked to my car, a simple sedan, nothing flashy, nothing that drew attention. Before I got in, I noticed someone standing by the entrance to the alley beside the restaurant. The young man, alone. His friends apparently gone. He approached slowly, hesitantly, like someone approaching a dangerous animal. "Please," he said, "can I ask you something?" I waited. He'd earned that much. The right to ask a question. How did you become what you are? How did you learn to move like that? To be so calm when someone attacks you? I looked at him for a long moment, deciding how much truth to give him. How much of my past to share with this stranger who'd thrown water in my face an hour ago. Then I decided. Maybe it would help. Maybe it would be another part of the lesson. "Come," I said. "Walk with me. I'll tell you a story." We walked through the city as the sun set, painting the buildings gold and orange. And I told him, not everything, not the worst parts, but enough. Enough for him to understand. I was born in 1960, I began. Soviet Union. A time and place where survival was its own form of victory. My father was a worker in a factory. My mother cleaned offices. We lived in a communal apartment with 3 other families. Shared kitchen. Shared bathroom. Shared everything. Privacy was a luxury we couldn't imagine. Food was rationed. Life was hard. But it was life, and we were grateful for it. We crossed a street. I continued. When I was 16, my father was arrested. Political reasons. Someone said he'd criticized the government. Maybe he had. Maybe he hadn't. It didn't matter. Guilty was guilty whether you'd done it or not. They sent him to a labor camp in Siberia. We never saw him again. Official records say he died 2 years later. I've never believed those records. I think he died much sooner, and they just didn't bother to update the paperwork. The young man listened in silence. His earlier arrogance was completely gone. He was beginning to understand the distance between his life and mine. The gulf between someone who'd never known hardship and someone who'd been forged by it. My mother tried to hold things together. But without my father's wages, without his ration card, everything became harder. I dropped out of school to work. Found jobs where I could. Loading docks. Construction sites. Anything that would pay. But being the son of a political prisoner made me suspect too. Doors closed. Opportunities vanished. I was marked. Tainted by association. We entered a park. Early evening walkers passed us. Couples holding hands. Parents with children. Normal life. The kind I'd never really had. When I was 18, I was conscripted into the army. 2 years of mandatory service. I thought maybe this would be my chance. Serve the state. Prove my loyalty. Clear my father's name through my service. I was naive. The officers knew my history. They knew my father had been an enemy of the state. I was assigned to the worst details. The most dangerous work. Given the jobs that were meant to break people. Or kill them. Do you understand what it means to survive a place designed to destroy you? In a moment, you'll understand what that kind of survival costs. There was another conscript in my unit. Yuri. He was from Moscow. Party member's son. Everything I wasn't. Educated. Connected. Protected. He decided I was going to be his entertainment. His way of proving he was tough. He made my life hell. Beatings when the officers weren't looking. Theft of my rations. Public humiliation. And I took it. Because fighting back meant court-martial, meant prison, meant following my father into the camps. So I endured. I paused at a bench, sat down. The young man sat beside me, listening with complete attention. One night, 6 months into my service, Yuri came at me with a knife. Drunk, angry about something. Decided he was going to cut me, scar me, maybe kill me. I don't think even he knew. But something in me broke that night. Or maybe it didn't break. Maybe it woke up. All those months of abuse. All that humiliation. All that rage I'd been swallowing. It came out. I looked at my hands. Old hands now. Scarred and weathered. But I could still see them as they were that night. Young. Desperate. Capable of terrible things when survival demanded it. I took the knife from him. I won't tell you how. I won't describe the violence. But when it was over, Yuri was in the hospital and I was in military prison awaiting trial. They said I'd attacked him without provocation. His word against mine. His father's connections against my father's legacy. I was sentenced to 5 years in a labor camp. The same kind of place that had killed my father. The young man's face was pale. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I can't imagine." "No," I said gently. "You can't. And that's fine. Most people can't. Most people shouldn't have to. That's what makes life worth living. That most people get to avoid the darkness. But listen. This is important. The camp was hell. Men died there regularly. From cold. From hunger. From violence. From despair. The guards treated us like animals. Like resources to be used up and discarded. And I learned something there that changed everything. I turned to look at him directly. I learned that the human body is capable of far more than we believe. That strength isn't just muscle. It's will. It's refusing to quit when quitting would be easier. It's getting up when staying down would mean death. There was a man in the camp. Older prisoner. Former athlete before his arrest. He taught a few of us. Showed us exercises we could do with no equipment. Ways to maintain our strength, our dignity, our humanity even in that place. And I latched on to that. I trained every day. Used my body weight. Used logs. Used rocks. Used anything. Because training gave me purpose. And purpose kept me alive. We sat in silence for a moment. The park was darkening. Streetlights flickering on one by one. I survived 5 years. Was released when I was 23. Came back to find my mother had died while I was imprisoned. Heart attack, they said. But I think it was grief. Her husband gone. Her son gone. Everything taken from her. I had nothing. No family. No prospects. No future. Just a body I'd kept strong through sheer will and a rage that never quite went away. The young man started to speak, but I held up a hand. I wasn't finished. I worked where I could. Day labor. Construction. Loading docks again. But I also found the underground fighting circuit. Illegal matches in basements and warehouses. Men fought for money, for reputation, for survival. I fought because it was the only thing I knew how to do anymore. And I was good at it. Very good. The years in the camp had taught me that pain is temporary but defeat is permanent. I learned to take damage. To keep moving. To find the moment in every fight where the other man doubts himself. And to exploit that doubt without mercy. I stood up. Started walking again. He followed. I fought for 10 years. Won most of my matches. Made enough money to survive. Built a reputation. People knew my name in certain circles. Anatoly. The one who never quits. The one who keeps coming forward no matter what you do to him. The one whose eyes never show fear. And slowly, very slowly, I built something resembling a life. I trained others. Taught them what I'd learned. Not just how to fight, but how to survive. How to endure. How to find strength in places you didn't know you had it. We'd circled back toward the restaurant. Toward where his friends had probably left his car. He stopped walking. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because," I said, "you need to understand something. When you saw me in that restaurant, you saw an old man. Someone you thought was weak. Someone you could humiliate for your entertainment and your social media. But you didn't see my history. You didn't see the camps, the fights, the survival, the decades of training that never stopped. You judged based on appearance, on age, on your assumptions about what strength looks like. I stepped closer to him. He didn't move back this time. And here's what you need to understand. Every person you meet has a history you can't see, has survived things you can't imagine, has capabilities you can't measure by looking at them. That old woman working as a cashier? Maybe she's a retired doctor who lost everything in a divorce. That homeless man on the corner? Maybe he's a veteran with PTSD who saved 3 people's lives in combat. That quiet person sitting alone? Maybe they're carrying grief that would crush you. Or maybe they're carrying skills that could end you before you understood what was happening. Have you learned to see people for who they really are, not who you assume them to be? What I'm about to tell you will explain why this matters more than anything else. Every person deserves respect until they prove they don't deserve it. Not because of their age or their appearance or their social status, but because they're human. Because you don't know their story. Because your assumption about who they are might be catastrophically wrong. And because treating people with basic dignity costs you nothing but makes the world infinitely better. He was crying now. Not from shame, though I'm sure he felt that, but from understanding. From the weight of the lessons settling on him. Thank you, he said. Thank you for not seriously hurting me. Thank you for teaching me instead. I'll never forget this. I promise you that. I nodded. Good. Now go home. Think about who you want to be. Not who your friends expect you to be. Not who social media rewards you for being. Who you actually want to be when you're alone with yourself. Then start becoming that person. It's hard work. Takes years. It never really ends. But it's the only work that matters. He held out his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm but not challenging. Respectful. He'd learned something today. Whether he'd remember it, whether he'd let it change him, that was up to him. I'd given him the opportunity. What he did with it was his responsibility now. I watched him walk away. Watched him get into his expensive car. Watched him sit there for a long moment before starting the engine. He looked back once. I raised my hand slightly. He nodded. Then he drove away. I stood there in the darkening street, thinking about the day, about the water on my face, about the choice I'd made not to truly hurt that young man even though I could have. Even though part of me, the part that remembers every humiliation, every beating, every moment of degradation from my past, wanted to. But that's the difference between surviving and living. Survival is about doing whatever it takes to make it through. Living is about choosing who you want to be even when you have the power to be something else. I survived the camps. I survived the fights. I survived decades of hardship that should have broken me or made me cruel. And I chose every day to not let it win. To not let it turn me into something I'd hate when I looked in the mirror. The restaurant incident would be online by now. I checked my phone and confirmed it. Multiple videos. Already going viral. Comments section filling up. Half the comments were calling the young man an idiot. The other half were debating whether I'd used too much force. A few recognized me. Shared stories. Some true. Some exaggerated. Some completely invented. That's how legends work. People take a fragment of truth and build mythology around it. But I'm not a legend. I'm just an old man who learned to survive. Who learned that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about controlling yourself. It's about having the power to destroy someone and choosing not to. It's about teaching instead of punishing when teaching is possible. It's about making the world slightly less cruel every time you have the opportunity. I got in my car. Drove home to my small apartment. Nothing fancy. I don't need fancy. I need functional. Safe. Mine. I made simple food. Chicken. Rice. Vegetables. The kind of meal I would have dreamed about in the camps. The kind of meal that reminds me every time I eat it that I survived. That I won. That they tried to break me and failed. After eating, I went to my training room. Just a spare bedroom converted into a simple gym. Pull-up bar. Dumbbells. Resistance bands. A mat. Nothing elaborate. I don't train for appearance. I don't train for competition. I train because it's who I am. Because it's how I process the world. Because the discipline of training, the ritual of it, grounds me in ways nothing else can. I trained for an hour. Not hard. Not pushing limits. Just moving. Maintaining. Connecting with my body. Feeling the muscle and bone and sinew that has carried me through 63 years of life. Thanking it silently for not quitting on me even when I wanted to quit on myself. After training, I showered. Sat in my chair by the window. Looked out at the city lights. Thought about that young man. Wondered if he'd really learn anything. Wondered if the humiliation would transform into wisdom or just fester into resentment. You never know with people. You give them what you can and hope it's enough. My phone buzzed. Messages coming in. People who'd seen the video. Old friends checking on me. Students wanting to know if I was okay. Reporters wanting interviews. I ignored most of it. Responded to the friends to let them know I was fine. Ignored the reporters. I don't give interviews. I don't explain myself to strangers. My life is my own, and I choose who gets access to my story. But one message caught my attention. Unknown number. Simple message. Thank you for today. I mean it. The idiot from the restaurant. I smiled. Typed back. Learn from it. Be better. That's all the thanks I need. His response came quickly. I will. I promise. Can I train with you sometime? Learn from you. I considered this. Considered whether I wanted this connection. Whether I wanted to invest time and energy into this young man who'd disrespected me. Whether he'd earned that opportunity. Then I thought about the man in the labor camp who'd taught me. Who'd seen something worth saving in a broken young prisoner and had invested his time, his knowledge, his care into keeping me alive and sane. He hadn't known if I'd be worth it. Hadn't known if I'd use what he taught me for good or ill. He'd just chosen to give me a chance. Come to this address Saturday morning. 6 a.m. Don't be late. If you're late, don't come at all. And know this. I'll work you harder than you've ever been worked. I'll push you to places you didn't know existed. And if you complain, if you make excuses, if you show me you're not serious, I'll send you away and you won't get another chance. Understand? I understand. Thank you. I'll be there. I gave him my gym address. Wondered if he'd actually show up. Wondered if the lesson would stick or if the comfort of his old life would pull him back. Time would tell. It always does. I sat there as the night deepened. Thought about my life. About the incredible distance between that 16-year-old boy loading boxes on docks and this 63-year-old man sitting in his own apartment in his own chair, master of his own time. About all the pain and violence and survival that filled the years between. About the choices I'd made. The people I'd hurt. The people I'd helped. The balance of it all. Was I a good man? I don't know. I've done things I'm not proud of. I've hurt people who probably didn't deserve it. I've made choices driven by rage and pain and the desire for revenge. But I've also tried, in my own way, to leave the world slightly better than I found it. To teach what I learned. To help people who were where I once was. To turn survival into wisdom and share that wisdom with anyone willing to learn. The water on my face today. The humiliation. The disrespect. It could have gone so differently. I could have seriously hurt that young man. Could have broken bones. Could have put him in the hospital. Could have let all my old rage come pouring out and used him as a proxy for everyone who'd ever humiliated me, ever hurt me, ever treated me like I was less than human. And part of me wanted to. God knows part of me wanted to. But I didn't. Because I'm not that person anymore. Because I've learned that violence should be a last resort, not a first response. Because I've learned that teaching is more powerful than punishing. Because I've learned that the truest strength is the strength to show mercy when you don't have to. Do you know what it means to have power and choose not to use it? What I learned that day continues to shape everything I do. Saturday morning came. I arrived at the gym at 5:45 a.m. Unlocked. Turned on lights. Prepared the space. Wondered if he'd show. At 5:55 a.m., there was a knock on the door. I opened it. There he stood. Different clothes this time. Simple workout gear. No logos. No flash. Just functional clothing. His face was nervous but determined. He met my eyes. Held them. "I'm here to learn," he said simply. I stepped aside. Let him in. Closed the door behind him. And so began another chapter in both our stories. The old man who survived everything and the young man who'd learned, through humiliation and grace, that survival isn't enough. That we have to choose every day to be better than our circumstances. Better than our past. Better than the easy cruelty that the world offers us at every turn. We trained that morning. I worked him harder than he'd ever been worked. Pushed him to places where his body wanted to quit, but his will kept him moving. And when he faltered, when his legs shook and his arms failed and he thought he couldn't continue, I told him about the camps. About training in the snow with frozen fingers. About doing push-ups on concrete floors while guards watched and laughed. About finding strength in places that shouldn't have had strength to give. And he kept going. Pushed through. Found something in himself he didn't know was there. And when we finished, when he collapsed on the mat gasping for air and drenched in sweat, I sat down beside him. "This is just the beginning," I said. "Strength isn't built in a day. Character isn't developed in a week. You'll train here every Saturday for as long as you're committed. I'll teach you everything I know. Not just about fighting or physical strength. About survival. About discipline. About choosing who you want to be and doing the work to become that person. But I can't do it for you. No one can. You have to choose it. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." He nodded, still gasping. "I choose it," he managed to say. "I choose to be better. To learn. To change." "Good," I said. "Then we'll start again next week. Same time. Don't be late." He wasn't late. Not that week. Not any week after. He came every Saturday morning at 5:55 a.m. Never early. Never late. Exactly when I'd told him to arrive. And slowly, over months, I watched him transform. Not just physically, though his body grew stronger, more capable. But mentally. Spiritually. He learned to see people differently. To respect the stories hidden behind every face. To understand that strength comes in forms that can't be measured or photographed or posted online. His friends noticed the change. Some made fun of him. Called him weak for apologizing. For training with the old man he'd disrespected. For becoming soft. And I watched him make the hardest choice of all. The choice to let those friendships go. To walk away from people who pulled him toward who he'd been instead of supporting who he was becoming. That choice, more than anything else, told me the lesson had taken root. The video from the restaurant stayed online. Went viral. Disappeared. Resurfaced periodically when someone new discovered it. Generated millions of views. Thousands of comments. Debates about respect, about age, about violence and restraint. Think pieces about toxic masculinity and the value of humiliation as a teaching tool. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone knew exactly what I should have done differently. As if any of them had stood where I stood. Had lived what I lived. Had earned the right to judge choices made in seconds that they got to analyze for hours. I ignored it all. Let them talk. Let them debate. My life wasn't a discussion topic for strangers. It was mine. The young man's transformation wasn't content for social media. It was sacred. Private. The real work of becoming better happens in quiet moments, in early morning training sessions, in conversations that no one else hears. Not in comment sections. Not in viral videos. Not in the performative outrage of people who've never been tested. 6 months after that day in the restaurant, the young man brought someone to training. Another young person. A woman this time. She'd seen the video. Had been following his transformation on social media. He'd started posting about his training, about the lessons he was learning, about the process of becoming better. She wanted what he'd found. Wanted to learn. Wanted to change. I looked at her. Really looked. Saw the same hunger I'd seen in him. The same recognition that the person she'd been wasn't the person she wanted to remain. The same willingness to do the work, to endure the discomfort, to face the parts of herself that needed changing. Why? I asked her. Simple question. But the answer would tell me everything I needed to know. She didn't hesitate. Because I've been cruel. Because I've hurt people for entertainment. Because I've lived like nothing matters except what people think of me online. And I'm tired of being that person. I want to be someone I can respect when I'm alone. Someone who makes the world better instead of worse. And he says you can teach me how. I nodded. Saturday morning. 5:55. Don't be late. She wasn't. And so the group grew. Slowly. Carefully. One person at a time. I didn't advertise. Didn't seek students. But they came anyway. People who'd seen the video and recognized something in it. People who were tired of being weak in ways that had nothing to do with physical strength. People who wanted to learn what I'd learned in the camps, in the fights, in the decades of survival. That real power is control, real strength is choosing mercy, real victory is becoming someone worth being. We trained every Saturday morning. I taught them exercises that required no equipment. Movements they could do anywhere, anytime. The same movements that kept me alive in the labor camp. The same discipline that transformed survival into life. But more than that, I taught them to see. To really see people. To understand that everyone is fighting battles invisible to outside eyes. To treat others with the respect and dignity that make civilization possible. Some quit. Couldn't handle the early mornings. Couldn't handle the work. Couldn't handle confronting the parts of themselves that needed changing. That was fine. This path isn't for everyone. Some people prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. I didn't judge them for leaving. But I celebrated those who stayed. Those who showed up week after week. Those who did the work even when progress seemed invisible. Those who chose over and over to be better than they were. 1 year after the restaurant incident, I was contacted by a journalist. Different from the others. She didn't want a sensational story about the viral video. She wanted to understand something deeper. Why I'd shown restraint. Why I'd taught instead of punished. What I was trying to accomplish with these training sessions that had started gathering attention. I agreed to meet her. Coffee shop. Public place. I don't trust journalists generally. I've seen too many times how truth gets twisted to fit narratives that sell better than reality. But something in her approach suggested she might actually listen. Might actually try to understand rather than judge. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 30. Professional. Prepared. She had questions written down, but she didn't look at them. Just looked at me. Started with the most important question. Who are you, really? Beyond the legend. Beyond the stories. Who is Anatoly? I considered the question. Considered how to answer honestly without revealing things that should stay buried. Considered how much truth this stranger had earned. I'm someone who survived, I said finally. Someone who learned that survival isn't enough. Someone who decided that if I was going to live, I should try to live in a way that justified all the pain it took to get here. Someone who believes that strength without purpose is just violence waiting for an excuse. She wrote nothing down. Just listened. Let the silence stretch. Good interview technique. Silence makes people uncomfortable. Makes them fill the void with more information than they intended to share. But I'd learned to be comfortable with silence in places where talking could get you killed. I waited her out. She smiled slightly. Recognized what I was doing. The video shows incredible restraint, she said. You could have seriously hurt that young man. Why didn't you? Because hurting him would have accomplished nothing, I said. He would have learned only that violence has consequences. Not why his actions were wrong. Not how to be better. Just that stronger people can hurt weaker people. He already knew that. Everyone knows that. The world is full of people teaching that lesson. The world needs more people teaching different lessons. Like what? Like mercy is stronger than vengeance. Like teaching is more powerful than punishing. Like everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes before they pay the full price. Like the strongest thing you can do is choose not to use all the power you have. She did write that down. Looked up at me. Is that what the Saturday training is about? Teaching those lessons. The training is about discipline, I said. About learning to control your body so you can learn to control your mind. About pushing through discomfort so you learn you're capable of more than you believed. About showing up consistently even when you don't feel like it so you learn that feelings are temporary but character is built through repeated action. The lessons about mercy, about seeing people truly, about choosing to be better, those come through the training. But they're not the training itself. They're what emerges when people commit to the work. Have you ever considered that the hardest battles we fight are against the worst versions of ourselves? What I'm about to share will show you why winning those battles matters more than any physical fight ever could. The young man from the restaurant, she said. I've been following his social media. He credits you with changing his life, saving him from becoming someone terrible. Do you see it that way? I shook my head. I gave him information, showed him possibilities, offered him an opportunity. But he did the work. He made the choices. He showed up every week even when his friends mocked him. He let go of relationships that were toxic. He faced uncomfortable truths about who he'd been. I can't take credit for that. That was all him. I just held space for his transformation and refused to let him make excuses. But without your intervention, without my intervention, something else would have eventually taught him. Maybe harder. Maybe too late. Maybe not at all. We can't know. What matters is what actually happened. He learned. He changed. He's becoming someone better. That's enough. That's everything. She asked more questions. About my past. About the camps. About the fighting. About how I ended up here, in this city, teaching young people on Saturday mornings. I answered what I felt comfortable answering. Deflected what I didn't. She was good at her job. Pushed gently. Probed carefully. But she respected boundaries when I established them. That earned my respect. The article she published 3 weeks later was fair. Honest. Didn't sensationalize. Didn't turn me into either a hero or a villain. Just told the story as it happened. Showed the before and after. Let readers draw their own conclusions. It generated more attention. More people wanting to train. More messages asking for advice. More debate online. But it also generated something unexpected. Letters. Physical letters. Mailed to the gym address that had appeared in the article. From older people. Veterans. Survivors of various traumas. People who'd lived through hardships similar to mine. People who understood, in ways younger people couldn't, what it meant to survive and then figure out how to live. I read every letter. Every single one. Took my time with them. These weren't asking for anything. Weren't seeking training or advice. They were just sharing. Saying, I see you. I understand. Thank you for showing that survival can lead to something more than bitterness and rage. One letter in particular stopped me. From a woman in her 70s. She'd survived the siege of Leningrad as a child. Had watched her family starve. Had eaten things that shouldn't be eaten just to survive another day. Had come to America decades ago and built a quiet life. Never talked about what she'd endured. Never sought recognition or sympathy. Just lived. But she wrote to tell me that seeing someone else who'd survived Soviet brutality choose mercy over vengeance, choose teaching over punishment, choose to build rather than destroy, it meant something to her. It validated her own choice to live with grace rather than rage. I wrote her back. Long letter. Told her things I'd never told anyone. About the nightmares that still come sometimes. About the guilt of surviving when others didn't. About the constant question of whether you've earned the life you're living when so many died. About the choice, made every morning, to be worthy of the gift of survival. About the responsibility that comes with understanding how easily life can be destroyed and how hard it must be protected and honored. She wrote back. And we began a correspondence that continued for years. 2 survivors. 2 people who'd seen the worst humanity offers and decided not to let it define them. 2 people who understood that surviving isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. The question is what you do with the life you've kept. The Saturday training continued. Grew. I had to limit the group size. Too many people and the lessons get diluted. Personal attention becomes impossible. The work becomes performative rather than transformative. I kept it to 12 regular students. Turned away dozens of others. Some understood. Some were angry. Felt entitled to my time, my knowledge, my attention. Those people wouldn't have learned what I needed to teach anyway. The entitlement was the problem, and they couldn't see it. 2 years after the restaurant incident, The young man who'd thrown water in my face asked if he could bring his father to meet me. I was hesitant, suspicious. Parents sometimes want to blame teachers for changes in their children they don't understand. Want to reclaim the influence they've lost. Want to challenge the new direction their children are growing. But something in how he asked suggested this was different. So I agreed. Dinner. Neutral location. His choice. The father was my age. Successful businessman. Self-made wealth. You could see it in how he carried himself. The confidence of someone who'd built something from nothing. But also the hardness of someone who'd had to fight for everything he had. He shook my hand firmly. Looked me in the eyes. Assessing. Measuring. Deciding if I was worthy of the influence I had over his son. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said in Russian. Good Russian. Native speaker. "My son has told me much about you. About what you've taught him. I wanted to understand for myself." We ordered food. Made small talk. Found common ground. We'd both grown up in the Soviet Union, though in different cities, different circumstances. Both understood that particular brand of hardship. Both had made it to America and built new lives from ruins of old ones. Then he got to the point. 2 years ago, my son was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Arrogant. Cruel. Entitled. Everything I tried not to raise him to be. I gave him opportunities one never had. Education. Wealth. Comfort. And somehow that abundance created a monster. I didn't know how to reach him anymore. Didn't know how to make him understand that life isn't a game. That actions have consequences. That people matter. He paused. Looked at his son, who was listening quietly. Then he came home one day, shaken. Told me what happened at the restaurant. Told me he'd made a terrible mistake. Disrespected an old man. Tried to fight him. Got humiliated. And I was proud of that humiliation. Proud that someone had finally taught him what I couldn't. Proud that he'd faced real consequence for his actions. The father turned back to me. But what happened after that? The training. The transformation. The person he's becoming. That's not because of humiliation. That's because of you. Because you chose to teach instead of just punish. Because you gave him tools to become better. Because you saw something worth saving in a spoiled kid who didn't deserve your time or patience. And I wanted to meet you. To thank you. To understand what kind of man does that. I didn't know what to say. Gratitude makes me uncomfortable. I didn't do anything special. Just chose mercy when revenge would have been easier. Just offered knowledge when walking away would have been simpler. Just held space for someone's transformation when judging them would have been more satisfying. Your son did the work, I said finally. I just showed him the way. He chose to walk it. That choice was his. The credit is his. I'm just someone who's been walking this path longer and knows some of the dangers to avoid. The father shook his head. You're too modest. But I understand. I was like you once. Had to be. Survival doesn't reward arrogance. It rewards quiet competence. But let me tell you what I see. I see a man who suffered terribly and didn't let it make him terrible. Who learned violence intimately and chose to use it sparingly. Who has power and chooses mercy. Who has knowledge and chooses to share it. That's rare. Precious. And I'm grateful my son found you. We finished dinner. Talked about other things. The father told stories about his own journey from Soviet poverty to American success. I shared some of my history, though not all. Some things are too dark to share over dinner with near strangers. But enough that he understood we'd walked similar paths, just in different directions. As we were leaving, the father pulled me aside. If you ever need anything, he said quietly. Business opportunity. Financial support for your teaching. Legal help. Anything. You call me. I mean that. You gave me my son back. That debt can't be repaid, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying. I thanked him. Told him I needed nothing. But appreciated the offer. And meant it. It's good to know there are people in the world who understand reciprocity. Who understand that gifts demand gifts in return. That the world works better when we take care of each other rather than just ourselves. 3 years after the restaurant incident, one of my students, a young woman who'd started training a year after the original young man, stopped me after a session. She looked nervous, scared even. I waited. Let her gather her thoughts. "I need to tell you something," she said finally, "about why I really started training with you." I nodded. People's reasons for training are often different from what they initially present. Sometimes they don't even know their real reasons at first. The work reveals them. "I saw the video," she continued, "like everyone else. But what struck me wasn't the fight. It was after. When you taught him. When you showed mercy. Because 6 months before that video, I'd done something similar to someone. Not thrown water, but I publicly humiliated someone for a social media video. Thought it was funny. Got thousands of likes. Felt validated. And then a month later, that person killed themselves." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Irreversible. The kind of truth that changes everything. "I didn't know they were struggling," she said, tears starting. "Didn't know my video would be the thing that pushed them over the edge. Didn't think about them as a real person with real pain. Just saw them as content. As entertainment. As a way to get validation from strangers who don't actually care about me. And when they died, when I found out, I wanted to die too. The guilt was crushing. Is crushing. Every day. Because I can't take it back. Can't apologize. Can't make it right. They're gone and it's my fault." I waited. Let her continue. "Sometimes the only thing you can offer someone is the space to speak their truth. When I saw your video, saw you choose to teach instead of destroy, saw you give that young man a chance to learn and change, I thought, maybe I could learn too. Maybe I could become someone who makes the world better instead of worse. Maybe I could honor the person I killed by making sure no one else ever gets hurt by someone like the person I was. So that's why I'm here. Not to get strong. Not to learn to fight. But to learn to be better. To become someone that person might have forgiven if they'd lived long enough to see it. Do you understand what it means to carry the weight of irrevocable harm?" What she told me next showed me how heavy that burden truly is. I sat down. Motioned for her to sit beside me. We sat in silence for a moment. I thought about the labor camps. About the men who died there because of cruelty, negligence, indifference. About my own role in violence that may have cost lives. About the complexity of guilt and responsibility and the impossibility of perfect redemption. "You can't bring them back," I said gently. "You can't undo what happened. You carry that weight forever. That's the price. But you have a choice about what you do with that weight. You can let it crush you. Let it turn into self-destruction that honors no one and helps nothing. Or you can let it transform you. Let it become the foundation of something better. Let their death mean something by making sure you live in a way that prevents similar harm." She was sobbing now. "But I don't deserve to be forgiven. I don't deserve to feel better. I deserve to suffer like they suffered." "Maybe," I said. "But what does your suffering accomplish? Does it bring them back? Does it heal their family? Does it prevent the next person from making the same mistake? Or does it just add more pain to a world already drowning in it?" I let that sit for a moment. Then continued. "You want to honor them? Live in a way that justifies their death, teaching you this lesson. Become someone who protects others from people like you were. Use your platform, because I know you still have one, to talk about this. About what you did. About what it cost. About how casual cruelty has permanent consequences. Let other people learn from your mistake without having to make it themselves. That's how you transform guilt into purpose. That's how you carry the weight without being crushed by it." She looked at me. "You think I can do that? You think I'm capable of being that person?" "You're here," I said simply. "You showed up. You did the work. You didn't run from the guilt or hide from the truth. You faced it. You're facing it. That tells me you're capable of more than you know. But it's not about what I think. It's about what you choose. Every morning. Every interaction. Every moment you have a choice between casual cruelty and deliberate kindness. Those choices accumulate. They become who you are. And over time you become someone different. Someone better. Someone who honors the dead by protecting the living." She stayed in the training. Kept showing up. And 6 months later, she posted a video. Long. Unedited. Raw. confessing what she'd done, taking full responsibility, not making excuses, not seeking sympathy, just telling the truth, explaining how it happened, how casual cruelty became tragedy, how entertainment culture creates distance between action and consequence, how she was living with it, how she was trying to be better. The video went viral. Different kind of viral than the restaurant video. This one generated thousands of comments from people who'd been on both sides of online cruelty. People who'd been humiliated and hurt. People who'd done the humiliating and were carrying guilt. People who recognized themselves in her story and were forced to confront their own behavior. She faced enormous backlash. People who wanted her punished, destroyed, erased. People who said she didn't deserve forgiveness or redemption. People who were probably right in some cosmic sense. But she also reached people who needed to hear what she had to say. Teenagers who were casually cruel online without understanding the impact. Adults who'd carried guilt for old actions. Parents trying to teach their children about digital empathy. She became an advocate. Started speaking at schools. Talking about digital citizenship, about seeing people as people rather than content, about the permanent consequences of temporary cruelty. And in doing that work, in facing her guilt and transforming it into purpose, she honored the person she'd hurt in the only way still possible, by making sure their death taught lessons that might save others. That's what I try to teach in the Saturday training sessions. Not just physical discipline, though that matters, but the harder discipline of becoming better, of facing the worst parts of yourself, of carrying the weight of your mistakes without being crushed, of transforming guilt into purpose, pain into wisdom, survival into life worth living. 4 years after the restaurant incident, I was diagnosed with cancer. Prostate. Caught early. Treatable. But it reminded me that I'm not immortal. That the years I survived, the life I built, it all has an expiration date. Everyone's does. But knowing it intellectually and feeling it in your bones are different things. I told my students, not for sympathy, but because I wanted them to understand something important. Mortality clarifies. Makes you ask what matters, what you want to leave behind, what will persist after you're gone. I don't know how much time I have, I told them that Saturday morning. Years maybe. Decades if I'm lucky and the treatment works. But maybe less. And that means I need to make sure the lessons I've learned, the knowledge I've accumulated, the wisdom purchased through decades of pain and survival, I need to make sure it doesn't die with me. I looked at each of them. You are my legacy. Not viral videos. Not stories people tell about the strong old man. You. The people you become. The choices you make. The way you treat others. The lessons you learned here that you'll carry forward and teach to others. That's what persists. That's what matters. That's what transforms survival into something meaningful. The treatment worked. I'm 5 years out now. Cancer-free. But that reminder of mortality changed something. Made me more intentional about the teaching. About making sure each lesson was clear, complete, transferable. About preparing my students to continue the work without me. I started recording things. Not for social media. For them. Video lessons. Detailed explanations of exercises. But more importantly, explanations of the philosophy behind the physical work. Why we train the way we train. What we're really building. How to teach others. How to recognize students who are ready. How to hold space for transformation without imposing your own answers. The young man who'd thrown water in my face 5 years ago came to visit me one day. He's 30 now. Completed his business degree. Working in his father's company. But also teaching. He'd started his own Saturday morning training group. Using what I'd taught him. Passing it forward. The way I'd hoped. I need advice, he said. I have a student. Angry. Traumatized. Reminds me of how I imagine you were after the camps. And I don't know how to reach him. Don't know if I'm capable of teaching what he needs. I smiled. The fact that you're asking means you probably are. What's his story? He told me. Young refugee from Syria. Had watched his family die in the war. Made it to our country alone. Carrying rage and grief that was eating him alive. Brilliant kid. Talented. But so angry at the world that he was destroying every opportunity he got. Sounds familiar, I said. What have you tried? Everything I learned from you. The training. The discipline. The philosophical conversations. But he's not responding. Just gets angrier. I'm afraid he's going to hurt someone or get hurt. I thought about it. About my own journey. About what finally reached me when I was drowning in rage. He doesn't need you to fix him, I said finally. He needs you to witness him. To see his pain without trying to minimize it or solve it. To hold space for his rage without being afraid of it. And most importantly, he needs to see that someone who suffered similarly made it through to the other side. He needs hope that transformation is possible. Not because someone tells him it is, but because he sees living proof. But I haven't suffered like he has, the young man said. I was a spoiled brat who learned a lesson. I'm not qualified to. Stop, I interrupted. You suffered differently, not less. Different. And you transformed. That's what he needs to see. Not someone whose story matches his exactly. Just someone who was one thing and became something else. Someone who chose to be better. That's enough. That's everything. He left thoughtful, uncertain but willing to try. And 6 months later, he brought that angry refugee kid to meet me. I recognized the look in his eyes immediately. The same look I'd had at his age. The same rage. The same grief. The same desperate question. How do I survive when everything I loved is gone? We talked. I told him some of my story. Not all of it. Not the worst parts. But enough that he understood I knew what it felt like. To survive when others didn't. To carry guilt that has no resolution. To rage against a world that took everything and offered no justice, no recompense, no meaning. You're angry, I said. Good. You should be. The world did terrible things to you. Took your family, your home, your childhood, your innocence. That deserves rage. But here's what you need to understand. Rage is fuel. It can power you, give you strength to keep going when everything says quit. But it's also poison. Keep it inside too long, let it define you, and it kills you. Maybe not physically, but it kills the part of you that can love, can trust, can build, can become something more than just survival and revenge. He listened. Didn't argue. Didn't dismiss. Just listened with the intensity of someone desperate for answers. You have a choice, I continued. You can let what happened to you be the end of your story. Let it define you forever. Die inside even if your body keeps walking around. That's one path. Valid path. Understandable path. Or you can let it be the beginning of a different story. A story about someone who survived horror and decided that survival wasn't enough. Who decided to build something that honored the people they lost. Who transformed grief into purpose and rage into determination. Both paths are hard. But only one leads anywhere worth going. Is this what you wanted to hear? Not yet. Keep listening. What I'm about to share explains why choosing the harder path is the only real choice there is. He came to the Saturday training. Brought an intensity that was almost frightening. Pushed himself until he collapsed. Did it again the next week. And the next. Using the physical work to process things he couldn't put into words. I let him. Didn't try to slow him down or protect him from the discomfort. Sometimes you have to burn hot before you can find equilibrium. 3 months in, he broke. Just collapsed during a workout and started sobbing. Years of grief pouring out. The young man who'd brought him held him. Didn't try to stop it. Didn't try to fix it. Just held space for it. Let him feel everything he'd been running from. And when it was done, when he was empty and exhausted and raw, the healing could finally begin. That was 2 years ago. He's still training. Still angry sometimes. Still grieving. But also building a life. Going to school. Learning English. Making friends. Finding purpose. He wants to be a trauma counselor. Work with refugees who've been through what he went through. Help them find the path he's found. Transform his own pain into expertise that serves others. That's the pattern I keep seeing. People who suffer greatly either become the suffering or transform it. There's no middle path. No way to just ignore it and move on. The pain is too big. It demands to be acknowledged. and how you acknowledge it determines who you become. I'm 68 now. 37 years since my release from the labor camp. 48 years since my father's arrest that started everything. More than half my life lived in freedom and relative peace. And still, I carry all of it. The hunger, the cold, the violence, the fear, the grief. It never goes away. Never fades completely. But its relationship to me has changed. It's no longer who I am. It's what I survived. It's what taught me. It's what gave me the knowledge I now share with others. The Saturday training continues. I'm training trainers now. People who can carry this forward when I'm gone. Teaching them not just the exercises but the philosophy, the approach, the way you see potential in people others have given up on, the way you hold space for transformation without forcing it, the way you push people past their perceived limits while respecting their actual boundaries, the way you build strength that matters. The young man who threw water in my face 7 years ago is getting married next month. Asked me to be at the wedding. Not in any official capacity. Just there. As witness to how far he's come. From spoiled kid playing at being tough to man building a life of purpose and meaning. I accepted. It will be good to celebrate transformation. To mark the distance traveled. To honor the work done. His fiancée trains with us too. She's strong. Smart. Sees him clearly, including his flaws, and loves him anyway. They're talking about starting a program for at-risk youth. Using physical training as a foundation for mentorship and life skills. Asked if I'd consult. Help them set it up. Teach their trainers. I said yes, of course. This is how it spreads. This is how individual transformation becomes social transformation. This is how the lessons learned through suffering become wisdom that spares others. The woman who'd caused someone's death through her cruelty, she's doing similar work. Founded a non-profit focused on digital citizenship and online empathy. Speaks at schools. Trains teachers. Helps parents understand the stakes of raising children in a world where cruelty can be broadcast instantly to millions. She still carries the guilt. Still thinks about the person she hurt. But she's transformed that weight into work that matters. Into lessons that might prevent similar tragedies. That's what I want people to understand. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's not about being forgiven or feeling better. It's about letting the worst things that happen to you or that you caused become the foundation of better things. It's about carrying the weight without being crushed. It's about transforming pain into wisdom and wisdom into action that serves others. The viral video from the restaurant is still out there. Still gets shared periodically. Still generates debate and discussion. Millions of views now. But what matters isn't the views. It's the conversations it starts. The questions it raises. The people who watch it and think about how they treat others. The young men who see it and reconsider their own behavior. The older people who see it and feel validated in their choice to show mercy. The survivors who see it and understand they're not alone. That's the real power of any moment that gets captured and shared. Not the spectacle. Not the entertainment value. But the conversations it enables. The teaching it makes possible. The way it spreads ideas that matter into spaces those ideas might never have reached otherwise. I still train every day. Not as hard as I once did. Age and cancer treatment took their toll. But consistently. Methodically. Maintaining the discipline that's kept me alive and sane for almost 7 decades. The ritual of it grounds me. Connects me to every version of myself that ever pushed iron or stone or body weight in pursuit of strength. The boy working docks. The prisoner doing push-ups in the snow. The fighter in underground rings. The aging teacher showing others the way. All of them present in every rep, every set, every training session. People sometimes ask if I have regrets. If I wish my life had been different. Easier. Less painful. And honestly, I don't know how to answer that. Of course I wish I hadn't suffered. Wish my father hadn't been arrested. Wish I hadn't gone to the camps. Wish I hadn't had to fight for survival in ways that scarred me permanently. Wish the path had been gentler. But would I be who I am without that path? Would I have learned what I learned? Would I be capable of teaching what I teach? Would I see people the way I see them? Would I understand suffering and transformation the way I understand them? I don't know. I can't know. The person I would have been without the hardship is a stranger to me. Hypothetical. Irrelevant. What matters is who I am. What I've done with the life I actually have. The choices I've made with the hand I was dealt. And I'm proud of those choices. Not all of them. I've hurt people who didn't deserve it. I've been cruel when I could have been kind. I've let rage and pain drive decisions that should have been driven by wisdom. But overall, in the balance, I've tried to make the world slightly better than I found it. That's enough. That has to be enough. The question I ask my students, the question I ask myself, isn't, did you suffer? Everyone suffers. Life guarantees suffering. The question is, what did you do with the suffering? Did you let it destroy you? Did you use it to destroy others? Or did you transform it into something that serves life? That transformation is the real work, the real strength, not the ability to lift heavy weight or throw powerful punches or endure physical discomfort, but the ability to carry psychological weight without breaking, to experience rage without becoming it, to survive trauma without letting trauma define survival, to live with pain without becoming pain. That's what I teach on Saturday mornings. That's what spreads through my students to their students. That's what the viral video really represents if people look past the spectacle to the meaning. That's my legacy. Not the stories about the strong old man, but the network of people learning to be strong in ways that matter, learning to survive and then learning to live, learning that mercy is stronger than vengeance, learning that teaching is more powerful than punishing, learning that everyone deserves respect until they prove they don't deserve it, learning that the world works better when we lift each other up rather than tear each other down. Next month I turn 69. 7 years since that water hit my face. 52 years since my father's arrest. 43 years since the labor camp. So much time. So much distance. So many versions of myself survived and transformed and left behind. And I'm still here. Still training. Still teaching. Still choosing mercy. Still building. Still becoming. That's the final lesson. You never arrive. You never complete the transformation. You never become someone finished and perfect. You just keep choosing. Every day. Every moment. Every interaction. You keep choosing to be better than you were. To learn from mistakes. To face uncomfortable truths. To carry weight without being crushed. To transform pain into purpose. To live in ways that honor everyone who didn't make it through, who didn't get the chance to transform their suffering, who died when you survived. You live for them. You live for yourself. You live for the people you can teach and help and guide. You live because survival demands it and life deserves it, and the world needs people who understand suffering but choose mercy anyway. That young man who threw water in my face 7 years ago? He's teaching others now. Spreading the lessons. Building programs. Helping people transform. And when he teaches, he tells the story of the day he disrespected an old man and learned the hardest lesson of his life. Not through violence. Not through revenge. But through mercy that demanded he become better. That's the story that matters. Not the viral video. Not the spectacle of an old man handling a young fool. But what came after. The transformation. The growth. The spreading of wisdom purchased through suffering. The way one moment of choosing mercy instead of vengeance rippled out into dozens of lives. Then hundreds. Then thousands as the story spread and the lessons took root. I sit here now, 7 years later, and I think about that moment. The water dripping down my face. The choice I had to make in seconds. Hurt him or teach him. Punish or guide. Become the cruelty that shaped me or become something different. Something better. I chose mercy. Not because I'm special. Not because I'm a saint. But because I've seen enough violence, caused enough pain, carried enough rage. I chose mercy because I was tired of adding to the world's suffering. Because I wanted my survival to mean something more than just not dying. Because I believed, maybe naively, that people can change if given the chance. And I was right. He changed. They all changed. Everyone who chose to do the work, who showed up consistently, who faced their worst selves and decided to become better, they all transformed. And in transforming, they proved that suffering doesn't have to be the end of the story. That it can be the beginning of something better. That redemption is possible. That mercy matters. That teaching works. That hope is justified. That's what I want you to understand. Whoever you are, listening to this story, whatever you've survived, whatever you've done, whatever pain you carry or cruelty you've caused, transformation is possible. Not easy, not quick, not painless, but possible. If you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to face truth, if you're willing to choose, every day, to be better than you were. The water that hit my face 7 years ago? It washed away nothing, changed nothing about my past. But it started something. A transformation in that young man. A spreading of lessons through everyone he touched. A viral moment that became a teaching moment that became a movement of people choosing to be better. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. One old man choosing mercy. One young man choosing growth. Dozens of students choosing transformation. Hundreds of people hearing the story and reconsidering their own choices. Thousands watching the video and learning something about respect, about strength, about mercy. That's how the world changes. Not through grand gestures or perfect people or dramatic revolutions, but through small choices, made consistently, by ordinary people who decide that survival isn't enough. That we owe it to ourselves, to each other, to everyone who didn't make it through. We owe it to them to live well, to be kind when we can, to be strong when we must, to show mercy when possible, to teach when able, to transform suffering into wisdom and wisdom into action that serves life. I'm 68 years old. I've survived Soviet labor camps, underground fighting rings, decades of poverty and violence and pain. I've caused harm and experienced harm in measures that should have broken me or made me cruel. But I'm still here, still choosing mercy, still teaching, still believing that people can be better than their worst moments, still proving, every Saturday morning, that transformation is possible. And 7 years ago, someone threw water in my face and called me an old fool. And I showed them mercy. And that mercy changed everything. That's the story. That's the lesson. That's what matters. Choose mercy when you can. Choose growth when you must. Choose to be better than your circumstances. Choose to transform pain into purpose. Choose to live in ways that honor your survival by serving others. That's how you win. Not by dominating. Not by destroying. Not by proving you're stronger. But by becoming someone worth being. Someone who makes the world slightly better just by moving through it with intention and grace and the wisdom that suffering taught you. That's the final lesson. That's what the water taught me to teach. And now, 7 years later, that lesson spreads further than I ever could have imagined. Through students teaching students. Through stories shared online and in person. Through people recognizing themselves in that young man's transformation and deciding they can transform too. I'm just an old man who chose mercy. But that choice echoes, ripples, spreads, changes things in ways I'll never fully see or understand. And that's enough. That has to be enough. The water that hit my face 7 years ago washed away nothing. But it started everything. And I'd choose mercy again. Every time. No matter what. Because that's who I decided to become. And becoming that person is the work of a lifetime that never ends. The end.